cooling technology, latent heat comfort technologies. Also has a recent patent granted on our instant portable non-electric heating technology as well. Using this heating technology, we make hand warmers, body warmers, food warmers, and various other products, which are useful for our forces who are deployed at high altitudes like Jagtial. They actually protect our nation standing in freezing conditions like -30, -40 degrees centigrade. We are very grateful from this city of Hyderabad. We make these 100% made in India heat packs. We have been supporting almost 20 different battalions across the eastern and northern segments of the country. I am also very grateful and proud to say that these very important products for the RP are actually made by the local women around our factory in Hyderabad. We train 20-25 women, and they are also part of our team. They are all part of our team. And extremely grateful for AgHub, Drona Srinivas Garu, MSR Garu, Aish Bada and team. They have been extremely kind in supporting us through this journey. And also, along with AgHub, we are supported by ITP Knowledge Park and BIRAC of Department of Biotechnology in this journey. Extremely grateful to the ecosystem for supporting us. Our aim is to use 100% made in India ingredients and make products for defense and civilian use within our country and potentially beyond India, and fulfill the common wish of every Indian, that is to be Atmanirbhar Bharat in the near future. I would say if I am standing here with this recognition, and it is primarily because of the IDEX initiative. So we went to one of the defense exhibitions where one Commodore Golaya has seen a cooling technology product that we made. He immediately saw that product, identified a need in Navy, and he mapped these two requirements. He said, gentlemen, this product, if you can actually develop into instant cold vest, I have seen my team on Indian Navy ships, they will have a great use. He immediately helped us. We applied for the IDEX grant, and they provided the grant, and we started developing. It's also opened the doors. Although the initiative is for Indian Navy, we have also realized that Air Force, Army, NDRF, and so many others also would get access to this one. We are done through stage 3, stage 4 of trials of this product. We have got access and permission to really end user, high security areas. We couldn't even imagine without the IDEX or MOD's initiative, we would have got anywhere closer to where we are today. I can also tell you simply, the heating product we developed, it is 6 years since we first have our prototype. We are finally starting to see the orders floating in, which were not part of the earlier MOD or IDEX initiative. But with the cooling technology, we are expecting our first order to hit our books over next couple of months. It is that straightforward. So they have actually reduced the overall time to market and also access to the end user. The biggest challenge is defense areas are all highly secured, so you can't easily access them as a civilian. But being part of programs like IDEX, in the ecosystem like AgHub, they enable us to really go talk to the relevant end user, and the entire ease of doing business concept, I think, is being implemented in this IDEX initiative. I was recently in Delhi talking to the chief of NIO. It's like a dream come true, and that would not have happened without IDEX and the initiatives the Defense Secretary was talking about. So we are, from the startup community, we are extremely grateful, and this is a fantastic inspiration. And seeing us, the way I see it is, so many more people will also take up this, the defense-based product journey, which is a scary thing in the past, as the Secretary also mentioned. But today, I think the success stories and things that are happening, I think many people will be willing to take chance and develop products for defense.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartupTV.
I think the government has been super supportive. A lot of policies are evolving, have evolved over many years. I started the company in 2012. We are in 2024. We've come a really long way in terms of how policies have evolved over the years. And us launching 4 missions in the last 2 years is a strong testament to how the government is trying to support space technology companies to, go into space. I think from a roadmap perspective, I think the future is pretty bright. Uh, you know, uh, from number of Indian assets in orbit, I think roughly we have probably one sixth or 1/10 of total number of space objects in orbit. And I believe when compared to the Western world, and I believe this gap is going to shrink over the next couple of years, where the number of space assets from India is going to increase quite significantly. There'll be a lot of private players having their own space assets in orbit. Government would also increase the number of assets that are in orbit. And I think most importantly, there'll be a lot of space tech companies that will build in India for the global market, which is quite phenomenal also for the growth of economic activity in this sector. Sure, I think talent is never a problem. We produce India as a country produces more number of engineers than any other country, and majority of these engineers are in a very young age bracket, which also puts us in a spot where we have young talent that can cater to newer technology research, so on and so forth. And space in general is not a specific subject, but it is a amalgamation of several engineering departments. For example, computer science, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, so on and so forth. So fusion of all these departments, so on and so forth. So I believe talent is not really a big problem. Also, we have a lot of former ISRO scientists who are there to support young entrepreneurs in their journey of building space technology solutions.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.
Our company is a multi-platform development solution provider for defense technologies. We mainly supply to the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force. We've just won an order for about 210 crores from the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force for supplying anti-drone defense systems. Now, not only are we looking at supplying to the Air Force and the Army, we soon have the Navy as well as a customer. We're also looking at supplying several smaller solutions to different arms of the armed forces. We're also looking at setting up international sales channels for the existing anti-drone product and for several other products that are there as a part of our kitty. T-Hub has been a fantastic partner in our entire journey. We've been with T-Hub from 2019. We've had AgHub open its doors to us even during COVID. So it really helped facilitate our journey towards becoming a defense startup where we are today. See, it's my belief that as long as you can add value to a process, money will follow. Okay, so if you ask me, Big Bang Boom has been one of those companies which has been very successful in raising funding. So we followed a very unconventional fundraise model. Initially, different startups would go to a venture capitalist and ask them for money. We did not go to any venture capitalists. We literally raised money from angel investors who typically have a higher risk appetite. We have 140 investors on our cap table. A lot of people think that's a weird way of going about things, but to us, that completely revolutionized the way we could raise funds for our business. Now we have a lot of VCs who want to come on board. So instead of us starting from VCs, we're now ending up with them in our second leg of our journey. So if you can reimagine business in a slightly different fashion and you can add value to a certain sector, the funds will follow for sure. So right now we have not only raised funds, but we've also acquired other companies who have not been able to raise funds and have integrated their technologies into what we are doing. So we have now, in a way, become a platform for being able to source funds for other people. Challenges are always going to be there. It's not unique to the defense sector, but it can always be. So it's been a journey. I mean, we won our first contract in 2019, and 2019 to 2024 is 5 years. Right? So saying that it's been all peaches and cream wouldn't be true because it's taken 5 years. But for a startup who previously wouldn't have had an established track record in defense, to be able to develop indigenous technology with an extremely low cash burn, and from a IDEX win to an order win of this magnitude in 5 years is a massive achievement, not just for the startup, but for the defense ecosystem in general. So when the defense secretary tells you that this has been made a lot easier, it's absolutely true. Like, you couldn't even have imagined something like this, say, even 10 years back. For a startup without a prior track record to win a 200 crore contract, it's absolutely impossible. Because think of it this way. Everybody in this ecosystem is taking risk in one fashion or the other. So you have startups who are staking their careers. You have venture capitalists who are staking their money. The government is taking its reputation. That's a big deal. Right? So you have somebody who's actually gone out there, you've had ministers, you've had bureaucrats who have taken a decision saying that this is where we want to put our fund on. And there will be failures along this journey. And for someone to have the risk appetite to take failures is almost a guarantee for success.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.
India, an emerging defense and aerospace innovation hub. This pivotal discussion will delve into the intricacies of India's emergence as a hub for innovation in the defense and aerospace sector, shedding light on the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead. I'm glad to share that we have leaders from the Indian Air Force, DRDO, VC ecosystem, and entrepreneurs. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our esteemed panelists, each bringing a wealth of knowledge and expertise to this discourse. As our panelists, we have Air Marshal AVSM VM, Indian Air Force, Shri Srikumar Prabhakaran, retired, Shri G. Satish Reddy, Chairman of the Governing Body of Aeronautical Development Agency, Mr. Lakshminath V., Managing Partner, Pavestone VC, Mr. Sanjay Nikanti, Founder and CEO of Dhruva Space Private Limited. As a moderator, we have Wing Commander Anish Anthony, retired, the Chief Operating Officer of T-Hub.
The first theme will be the optimizing the utilization of startup as a driver of innovation, defense and the aerospace sector. So my first question will probably go to you, sir. I think, like he said, there are almost 850 plus startups in the defense and aerospace innovation ecosystem today. How can the Indian government and established defense firms, they can help startups to integrate better into the defense innovation ecosystem? What do you think that the startups need to do from their side? And what do you think that the ecosystem, senior players in the ecosystem like the DPSUs or the corporates need to do to help them integrate better?
Point what you asked me. Firstly, looking at the innovations in the country, the startups in the country, there is a huge quantum jump in the number of systems which have come up. As you know, in 2016, there were about 460 or so startups. Now there are about 1,14,000 startups which have come up in the country and going on every day. And defense was normally kept away for all the even startups and in the industries also. That now, that gap has been filled. Industry are also working a lot for the defense, and a lot of startups have also started coming in. A lot of schemes government has brought in, like Defense Secretary has mentioned some time back, the IDEX or the TDF or Make 1, Make 2, IDDM and all those things have come up. But still, as far as the startups are concerned, I feel there are many things which need to be addressed and which many things need to be simplified. Firstly, the funding. In India, I still consider in India, early stage startups or deep tech startups, funding is a question mark from India. As most of them are somehow managing with the funding from outside, and here getting it is little difficult. Second, when we look at even IDEX or anything, the funding is primarily for a product or a technological product, whichever way it is you say, as an end product or a technological product, not as such for a technology, which actually is supposed to have been from TDF. Somehow the TDF, I think last couple of years has not taken very well in the last couple of years. So that's another thing. So when you look at that type of a funding, the IDEX 10 crores, even though it has been increased from 1 crores to 10 crores, that is not sufficient. The TDF funding has been increased from 10 crores to 50 crores, that's a good thing. So that needs to be supported. Probably the other schemes like NRF or the quantum mission, which are about 50,000 crores and 6,500 crores which are coming up, these missions should be able to support the deep tech startups getting into technology. What I am saying is, the startups here, if they have to beat the world market and not just the Indian people, the product really has to be a technologically advanced or first of its kind product. Then you need to spend a lot, both funding wise and otherwise, a lot into the deep technology. This is one of the issues what we face. Second, whatever Defense Secretary said, they are all at the system level and product level what services the armed forces require. Many of the things which startups produce are not the end product what goes to services. Let's say you have a product, a subsystem or a product which goes into a tank or which goes into a fighter aircraft. The services won't come into picture unless he is responsible for the MRO of that and all that. It is some other agency which comes into picture, which has established supply chain. You have to break that chain and see that this product gets into it. There is a pain involved into it. That pain, this agency, whichever is responsible, should be able to take the pain. This is a second issue, because many of the startups, they don't bring an aircraft, they don't build a tank. So they build a product which is a technology-based product which needs to get into it. You have, let's say, an IR camera you have. If he makes a bolometer-based camera today, how does it get into the system? Who takes the decision? How does it get into all the processes? And the man who is already responsible for it, how does he take a risk in the government side also? This risk-taking are a aggressive approach to have the new products or indigenous products or the startups-based innovations, we need to get into it. This is the second issue what it is. And thirdly, even the products which are getting into the services, one thing is it takes about 2 to 3 years time process today. And unless a product is normally in defense, the norm is if a product is not inducted into the services of the respective country, the other country won't buy. General norm it is. So how does this get into quickly? Whether this process can be hastened? If not, can the startup sustain this period of 3 years, 4 years, 5 years for the product to get into it? Development cycle, the acquisition process, the induction process, the trials, quality, whatever it is. This is another issue what the startups need to. One more issue I think I feel is, particularly in the defense, the connectivity for the startups is also a big question mark. Whom to approach for what, whatever an idea I have. That's number one. Second thing is, a suo moto proposal or an ab initio idea, how does it get into it? IDEX gives you challenges, you have to get into that challenges only. No, he has got a completely different thing and nothing connected to the verticals which are proposed by anyone. Need to propose that and I want to come into that, and how do I maintain that? How do I get into this system? Second, if I come out with an innovation, an innovative idea, and if you make it public, if I approach you, you are in the government, if you make it public, it is no more an innovation of the particular individual startup. Yeah. You put it in limited and are open to take the idea and put it into,
First mover advantage.
absolutely lost. So these, I can narrate many of the issues. I thought these are some of the issues what startups have, which you need to see. I don't think I should much comment on what startups should do, because they are just coming up. We need to encourage them. We need to understand them. Otherwise, the ecosystem won't come in the country. So maximum needs to be done by the bigger industries, or DPSUs, or the government needs to address the issues what I have mentioned.
Air Marshal Prabhakaran sir, I think you've served for more than 40 years in the Indian Air Force, right? At multiple levels, at an operator level, at a decision maker level, finally as an Air Marshal in the Southern Air Command, right? You've flown fighters, you commanded units. From a user perspective, right, there will always be an apprehension when adopting newer technologies. And more so, I think if you put from the lens of a pessimist, right, you will typically we prepare for the worst. When in flying, we prepare for all of these emergencies who are inherently preparing for the worst case scenario where you can handle them effectively. So if I put that same lens onto startups and say, hey, am I getting a system which is not as well proven, which is not having as much of a production line capacity, which the gestation period has not been as much as other. So how do you think that from the user perspective, from the armed forces perspective, you can open up to be enabled to accommodate for more startup-related technologies to be adopted into the armed forces?
What I mean is that it gives an opportunity for the young innovators to get in touch with the end users. I can tell you my experience in the Air Force is because we always have to go through the ministry, through the DRDO. Ultimately, the user never really comes face to face with the actual innovator. So I was very glad to hear the Defense Secretary mention today that the ministry is changing its rules, making things much simpler. Even though, I mean, a lot of improvements have been done in the last 10 years, but still we have some way to go. But despite that, he mentioned that any of the innovator who has been selected, and today I could see some bright guys coming up and picking up prizes, that the Air Force, let's say it was an Air Force issue, or the Army or the Navy, they would handhold them to take them right till the end of the tunnel. So that is one thing which can happen when you have more such interactions right from the user up to the guy who actually makes the product.
So what would be your advice to startups? How can they reach out to help these navigate these barriers more effectively?
See, now, like once again, what the Defense Secretary mentioned in the website, all the various, and I think there are more than 2,000 or 3,000 items which have been listed out. So they could go on to that. They could see where it is that their, which niche, this thing they can work on, and thereafter they come and through T-Hub, through the ministry, once we get, because the Air Force directly cannot deal with the innovators. That's the problem, you see. But once they have been seen, like, for example, I would really love if the few guys, the few company, startups who were called on stage today, if through you all, they could be made to go to Air Headquarters, to the Directorate of Project, who's in charge of all new thing, and give their ideas. Maybe something will click. Not all, I don't say all, but something could. So I think these are the ways and means of moving things ahead, because like I think it was often brought out, India is the third or the fourth largest, as far as defense equipment buying is concerned. Why should all that go abroad when we have all the brilliant minds, as Sri Bhatia mentioned, 450,000 Indian engineers working for companies abroad. So all this we need to harness so that we become, self-sufficient and not depend too much on others. In fact, I would like to bring this point. When he spoke about this dependence on others during war, I think Sri Bhatia mentioned during war, it becomes critical. I'd like to tell the audience, in the 1982 Falklands War, when Argentina went against Britain, Argentina had just bought Super Etendard aircraft, right? And their pilots were just about undergoing training. They were halfway through their training, and they just got, I think, 6 Sea Eagle missiles when France put a stop to their training and a stop to any more knowledge passed on to them. So these 6 pilots who had been trained, between themselves, they quickly trained, they learned how to use that missile, and they knew they had only 6 of these missiles. And they managed to use it to sink 2 or 3 of you would be aware of that. So that's the kind of, hold which a foreign country can have on you when you're in trouble. So it is so important to be as self-sufficient as possible.
You got around 35 years of experience, right? Global business strategy, innovation, M&As. You now run Pavestone, which is probably one of the largest funds in India as a managing partner at Pavestone. One of the biggest challenges for defense startups in particular is the ticket size of that entire development cycle that they go through, right? I mean, it is not as easy or as easy to access to capital when it comes to getting that size of capital. Even from the investor's perspective also, the gestation period is too long for that, right? So how do you think that the startups could be able to navigate these challenges that they encounter in the defense and aerospace sector?
So I run a $100 million fund. We focus on 2 areas. One is what we call B2B, and one is what we call as frontier technology. And I'll kind of tell you how that kind of fits in. And we probably were one of the first funds to support a defense startup. Probably 2.5 years back, the company is New Space Research, one of India's, the first Indian company to launch swarming drone technology, one of the most heavily funded companies at this point in time. So can talk a little bit about the journey, but I'll try to give you the gist of it. I think there are 2-3 things that we need to keep in mind. As a VC, obviously, we have a fund, we have raised money from investors, so we owe a return to the investors. And there's a certain time frame that we operate in. So there's obviously a pressure on returning money capital back, and there's a return pressure. So that's something you need to always keep in mind at the back of when you're trying to make a decision, okay? Second thing is, when we look at this space, standard issues apply. One is, if I'm funding something in a B2C space, I know that there are, 500 million Indians, and I can see a large market, and I can do the multiples, right? Here, the usual questions are, we have a single client risk. When the person is selling, there's just one large client he is to sell to. What happens if, if there's a change in something, we don't know what it is, right? And then what's the impact? So that's something that we'll obviously have to consider. And people then, kind of pivot with, I have something for dual use kind of technology. I can do both commercial and defense and exports. That's one of the mitigation strategies. Second thing is I would say number of institutional investors, especially outside of India, do not invest in defense. So if your fund is focused on defense totally, then they would not, invest in you. So
like a dual-use startup, you have a dual-use fund as well.
Yeah, right? No, in the sense it's very difficult for you to raise large amounts of money because, they have the restriction, rightly, wrongly, that's another, very difficult for us to raise that. So very important to manage the LPs in your fund. So that's the second constraint that we have, okay? So in order to address that, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the other positives that is, in order to address that, we kind of look at it as, it's not just about startups. How do you make the startup a grown-up? Okay, that's the most important part, right?
Yeah.
Startup is nice. No? You get the fund, you get grants, you get to a certain level. The beauty of the game is how do you make it a large company, an institution, okay? So in order to do that, what we've been trying to do is we are looking at them through our what we call a frontier technology lens. We have a certain portion of our budget allocated for that. And if they do well, then we look at them through the B2B lens, okay? That is, Satish Reddy sir mentioned that it is about, say, if you have to sell to you have to sell a platform, you're one part of it. Your product alone doesn't sell, okay? It is, how does it fit in? How does it work in many things? What's the cost of replacement? What's the cost of integration testing? Your product may cost 1 rupee. To test it, it may cost $1 million rupees. Okay?
Yeah.
So you should look at it through that lens. It's extremely important. And anybody who's been in large corporations and sold large systems like core banking know the importance of it. So understanding B2B mindset is extremely important. So we look at startups through a frontier technology lens, and if they do well, then we are open to consider it as a B2B. And we have 2 buckets for it, okay?
Sure.
Secondly, we also have a strong LP network. Today, we talk to a lot of LPs, and a lot of family offices are very interested in funding. So the fund may put a certain amount, but along with the LPs, you can actually put in a larger amount, okay? So that's the way we try to mitigate it. So fund is, when you look at your, let's say you're a startup and you're looking at a VC, early stage, early growth is great, but if they don't have a B2B strategy, you may not get supported long term unless they have a very strong LP network. That's the way I kind of think about it. Coming to the startups, I think fantastic energy, passion there. I think my only submission is when I look at it from a platform lens, okay? And the kind of skills that you need for this space is extremely different from, you need, it's a mission critical system. So the way you build it, you deploy it is extremely different. So that mindset is extremely important. So that's what I would like to say, and happy to take any more questions.
Sanjay, I think navigated this space quite well over the last few years, right? I think you've recently raised a round also. I think we'd love to hear about that as well. But what would be your advice to 2 parts, right? One is to startups who want to build out in the space sector, and second is to organizations like T-Hub who want to help out to build out a vertical for the space sector startups.
Started my company in 2012, straight out of college, talking to prospective customers. And my prospective customers were largely academic institutions who were trying to build space missions. When I also tried to talk to users, being the Triforces or talking to ISRO, DRDO, it was practically very difficult to sell because nobody was willing to believe that a 24-year-old can actually start like a space tech company in the country.
But why space tech? I mean, why space tech, space engineering?
Sure. So after the success of Chandrayaan-1, there was a scientist from ISRO who had visited our university. I was studying at SRM University in Chennai. And he said that we as students could actually build a satellite. I was part of a very large audience, and I was definitely very excited about the idea, but I wasn't really sure if something like that was possible. And then our university decided to fund that program, and we ended up building this whole satellite. And during the process of building the satellite, I realized that, we are a country with 1 billion people, but, we've sent missions to moon. We were talking about other, really great missions. We have a fantastic defense program, but there's not a single private company in the country that was building full satellites and, serving global markets. So for me, that was like the trigger point that, as a 19-year-old, if I'm able to build out a satellite, why is it that, you can't build a business in the country? And that kind of motivated me to take this journey. However, first things first, it becomes when you're a startup, when you're trying to build out a business, the question, where do you get the money? Who is your customer, right? And for customer or business, you need a product, right? So where do you start, right? So initially when we started off, we were talking about building a satellite, trying to raise capital. And then investors would be like, okay, but who is your customer? And I'm like, okay, I don't have a customer. And that's when I truly believe that the policy changes within the country opened up the opportunity for us, where, you know, the Startup India program saying, giving a level playing opportunity for a startup to also work with a large, large company allowed us to look at problem statements laid down by the users or R&D institutions. For example, our first customer, our first large customer was DRDO, where we had actually bid for building, rather indigenizing one of the most critical components that is used on satellites, which is the satellite solar arrays. We built a small solar panel, a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter one used for satellites. But when we went to DRDO and said, hey, we can actually build out like a 1 meter by 1.2 meter panel, it was not easy, right? Because ISRO was doing it for many, many years. And it's a very complex problem to solve. That we were able to solve by piecing multiple things together. Like we worked with the PSUs in the country, we worked with BHEL, we worked with L&T, which is a larger entity. We did the design. We leveraged the ecosystem to solve that problem. So once that problem was solved, we had investors to believe that, okay, hey, you know what, you have a customer, you're serving that need, and now the question becomes, are you good enough for a VC play or not, right? So when I started looking at capital, now that I have a product, now that I have a customer, the question became like, who would back this business? And the problem when we were trying to raise capital in 2017, 2018 timeframe was precisely that, VC funds were largely looking at non-defense programs. And when you say that your customer is going to be a defense customer, VCs would be like, okay, probably not our bet. So what we did, how we were able to solve the problem is we had angel investors who came on board. So I had to talk to about 160 investors before finding our first play. Then the playbook became little more streamlined because the policy worked, the customer side of things worked. In terms of scaling up, just like what Sir mentioned, I think as a defense or a space company, if your strategy is you're only building a space or a defense company, it's very hard. So we are largely looking at a dual use case where the applications that we are building for space and defense will also have a commercial application. If we are building a remote sensing satellite, I can sell the remote sensing satellite data to many other people.
Primary forte has been communications. One of the, I still feel that you should have focus on that, which have both dual use purpose, and I think the world is moving to that, and try to do more and more focus in that. Probably somewhere we should work with the government and definitely get a bigger project, whatever our 108 satellite or whatever it is, that scheme. I think somehow I feel that you should focus more on that.
Sure, sir. Thank you very much for the advice. So one of our biggest challenges were, especially to focus on one specific application, was that how do you address a rapidly changing market environment? So we wanted to build a foundation that will enable us to serve a variety of applications in any changing market environment. So instead of focusing on communication specifically, what we decided was that we will play a platform play, where if a customer wants a imaging satellite, the platform can be utilized for imaging application. If the customer wants it for weather, etc., again it can be customized for that application.
Hyderabad Telangana per se is has a lot of strengths when it comes to defense and aerospace manufacturing. You look at aviation academies, you look at the number of high precision engineering companies or SMEs that are there available in Hyderabad, right? a lot of corporates have already started moving in. Tassel Lelo, GMR Lelo, Boeing, all of Airbus, all of them have started moving in here. What are the kind of opportunities that you think that will unlock for startups, not only in the engineering, precision engineering space, but beyond that, do you think Hyderabad can become a defense startup hub for the rest of India, a defense startup capital for the rest of India?
See, yeah, one thing like Mr. Jayesh Ranjan was mentioning, Hyderabad has been a prime city or center for defense, primarily, and also aerospace. If you look at all the DRDO laboratories which have come here, have come in somewhere 1958 or 1960, and I'm sure majority of the laboratories are here, and actually they're mostly divided between Bangalore and Hyderabad, and majority of the funding goes to these laboratories because they are more of strategic in nature and working more in aero, missiles and electronic warfare and all that. Then if you look at the PSUs, again you have everything here. You have the complete HL unit, you have the Bharat Electronics working on electronic warfare, and BDL, which has got 2 units here, and then over and above that you have related materials, related NFC and NFTC, and then you have ECIL, which are there. And I almost think that the number of industries which have been supporting, which have been in the part of the supply chain here, have been about more than 1,000 industries which have been there in that. One example which not today, almost about 4 or 5 years back example I try to give. One of the missiles which got into armed forces maximum in number value wise is Akash missile, more than about 25 to 30,000 crores worth. BDL is the integrator, or BDL is the production agency, whatever you call it. And almost about 86 to 87% by value of the Akash missile has been coming from the MSMEs and mostly from Hyderabad. 86, 87%. So BDL actually primarily has been concentrating only on the integration, and they went to the extent of supplying 60 missiles a month. And then one day I remember CMD BDL was promising that I can go even to 120 missiles a month. So that's out of the support what has come in. Now the things are changing. The warfare, actually technologies what are used in the war are changing a lot. Never we thought that drones will play so much of a role, and weapons, the lasers, the electromagnetic pulse, and related so many systems started coming into it, which actually the startups have taken the forte. Like example you take in Hyderabad, the quantum technology. At least there are 2 companies which have come here who are working on quantum memories and quantum communication related things and all that. You see the drones and anti-drones systems, at least I think 2 companies have seen. One is that Big Bang Boom, and one more company from Hyderabad who have come up with small anti-drone systems which are required today, which actually is continuously changing today. See, today, if you talk about anti-drone technology, talking about a one-to-one system or a laser system or a jamming thing, doesn't work today anymore after 1 or 2 years. You need to have technologies which are coming up in a big way, like swarm technologies, and there are 500 drones coming. How do you handle them? What are your technologies you require? This is where requirement. So the necessary background and base exists in Hyderabad out of so many academic institutions here, and that too particularly today, over and above that academic institutions, which are probably 300 academic institutions in around Hyderabad. Then IIT which has come in, Triple IT, and even in ISB, a lot of innovations which are coming out. So lots of innovations are coming up. If you look at last 3 months, I myself, at least I have visited and gone to almost about 50 startups and seeing working for aerospace and defense. And so people are coming up. It's only the right guidance, what type of a right novel thinking, an idea which is not existing sort of an one, where you come out and you are able to design and get funds for that and provide is what is required. So I definitely perceive, very strongly perceive for defense, Hyderabad as the strong base for innovations to come up. And aerospace also definitely, out of many things which are coming up in the aerospace sector, with ISRO also having its presence, and various other aviation sectors, like you said, TSL and many other companies which are coming. Actually, we were talking to Mr. Mohan Reddy also, the way their companies, many people who have become part of supply chain to the entire world. So you need to have all those components or subsystems and products which are there to come out with innovative, the technologies which are coming up and supply is one thing. And particularly with you, T-Hub and T-Works coming up, I think it has given a necessary boost into this city or into the state or surrounding places where a lot of people are jumping into it. And the only thing is, we have to see that those people who have jumped into it, at least down the line, 5 years, they should start tasting the success. Otherwise, the next batch, should not be held because these people didn't get the success. And that is where we all have to see that the state government and central government agencies which are present here, organizations present here, make the startups which have already jumped into it come up successfully. Whatever time period, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, that should happen. I think that kicks off the Hyderabad, which has got the necessary ecosystem, support system, all infrastructure existing in the industry base, which is existing, you should be able to take on.
If you look at the 2025 capital outlay for the capital expenditure for the Ministry of Defense, almost $20 billion has been set aside for capital expenditure, right? Now you overlay that with the policy of having to procure locally as a norm, and then go internationally in case of an exception of something that is not available here. Recently, I think the list 5 has come out for protective good, which you have to prepare only in India, right? When you overlay all of these things together, the defense sector now suddenly starts becoming a lot of opportunities start getting created for in-house homegrown countries. So do you see LPs, investors, funds looking at that opportunity positively? Do you see an inflow of funds, or maybe at a certain point of time, near future, medium future, defense-focused funds getting created?
Absolutely, I see that. My simple analogy on that is, see, end of the day when you're eating, right, dal roti makes the major portion of your meal, okay?
Yeah.
The innovation and all is nice, it's very, sexy, etc. But lot of basic stuff that you consume is most important. And when you talk of something like that, fundamentals are extremely important. So I strongly see that happening. And I see that there will be essentially 3 plays in that. One is there will be companies, there will be VCs which will fund that kind of enterprises at a B2B kind of level. Secondly, you will see PEs come in who will integrate some of these things and provide a longer solution. See, this is more a PE play than a VC play because this becomes a margin play rather than a revenue play, right?
Yeah.
The moment it's a margin play, you will see a lot more PE companies come in. And you will also see larger companies, look at this space and kind of do acquisition. So I see these 3 things, okay? I just wanted to point out one thing on what Satish Reddy sir said on ecosystem. I think absolutely, in the sense, ecosystem is the end of the day, it's not buildings, it's culture, okay? And culture is all about conversations, okay? Just to give you, and it's going to take time. I was part of the management team which set up India's first multinational software company in '86, okay, Intergraph. And today, the GC system is one of the largest, okay. Why? Because there's a brand built. So the way I look at it is, 50 years back, if you talk to India, people associated you with Mahatma Gandhi, okay. 30 years back, Mahatma Gandhi and yoga, okay. Now it's Mahatma Gandhi, yoga and IT. Okay, and space, right? I see that brand is an extremely important component. And I see that events like this, the conversations are very important. See, 30 years back, when you went to a coffee shop here, people will talk about, only 2 things. Where do I buy the next land? When do I go abroad? When do I get my green card, right? Those would be the conversations. But the conversations today are very different. What am I building? How do I make a difference? So that's extremely powerful, okay? And I see that as a big game changer. So.
Yes, please.
One of the things which came up, especially for the young innovators or startups, is that if you only look at the defense market, that means if it's only, let's say, the Air Force or the Army or the Navy, then you may be looking at a very small market. So one of the things which I think present day Indians, when they start something, is they have to look global, which means, I think it was brought out by one of the speakers, that you have to look at standards, not just for the Indian Defense Forces, but something which in due course you can export. So it has to be that kind of a standard which you aim for right from the beginning.
Satish sir, you had a comment?
This particular point, people are looking at it. See, I keep saying in my talks, with the startup ecosystem coming up in the country, the mindset of the country has changed. The mindset of the country, whoever wanted to start industries earlier, used to be an ancillary mindset. Can I supply to DRDL? Can I supply to HMT? Can I supply to BHL? And what product you want and all. Now the mindset, whoever is working, I've seen lots of products. The product, actually, they are looking at a globally marketable product. Example, I'll give you just a medical device, somebody I was seeing. You touch that with your thumb, then it gives you the blood sugar, BP, heart rate, and ECG, and whatnot, oxygen levels and everything. Nowhere exists in the world. The type of quality, the product, and each and every details the startup has gone into it, right from anodization, how to make the box, the unit,
the form factor,
much better than many of the most modern mobiles.
Handsets,
Is much better the quality is. Only thing is, the problem is, as I said, the marketing capability, the initial funding, and the right connects into the world or in the country. These are the issues what we need to look at for the startups, and that happens, I think people are geared up. And it is the country, the type of momentum what it has got, if we are actually not sustain that momentum, it is very difficult for this country to get back again.
So are investors now starting to, the ISRO or the governmental space program has made a niche for itself across the world. I mean, it is very well renowned, recognized and all of that, right? In the private sector, do you see investors looking at Indian space sector as an opportunity to carve out a fund there, to be able to set aside fund, like they've set aside, PFSO set aside for defense, for example, right? And then maybe move on to a B2B play. Do you think people are starting to carve out those in their portfolios, carve out those funds to be able to deploy into the space sector?
Definitely see a lot of interest from investors looking at the space and defense sector increase over the last 12 to 18 months. However, it's also, you know, what kind of investors are looking is also very important.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of capital has been raised in the Western markets to, you know, meet certain goals. And but if you look at their capability on delivering results, some of them who've done SPAC deals and went public, they're not performing the way they were supposed to do. So there is also a possibility that some of these companies would like to deploy cash into India to look at you know, tapping into the market opportunity as well as the manufacturing opportunity. In addition to that, I think also from an entrepreneur's perspective, I think the regulatory framework or the government frameworks have been extremely supportive. You know, when we were trying to raise capital, we were also looking at debt options. And, you know, in this particular round, we found participation of SIDBI as well as the Technology Development Board. And that is like a very welcome move, because this was not something that we were anticipating, or that system existed like, you know, 24 months ago. And in fact, this framework is evolving very fast. We are talking to numerous bankers, and bankers are also looking at the possibilities where if you have a government contract, how you know, it can be supported. So I think the future looks definitely bright if entrepreneurs are looking at the space and defense sector. The caveat being, please do not look at space and defense where government and military will be your only customer. It is extremely important to look at enterprise opportunities within India and also outside of India. As long as that framework is stitched out well, I think, you know, businesses will thrive.
Thank you very much to all the panelists. I think we've had a great discussion here. I personally have learned a lot. Thank you very much for participating in the panel.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to my Startup TV.
Gurutva Systems is an indigenously company which has been working on basically demanding applications. We wanted to work on indigenous solution for demanding application, and we work majorly in three areas. One is the counter drone, basically anti-drone system. Second is on the heating systems for the high altitude and extremely cold environment. And the third area what we work is in the gyroscopes and accelerometers, which is the inertial systems. We are fortunate enough to win Indian's IDEX challenge, which is the startup challenge for anti-drone run by Ministry of Defence. We are the only startup company which is winner of MHA as well as the Defence startup challenges. So we have also won a BSF Bhumi competition for illegal use of drones. So on anti-drone domain, we are working with not only Ministry of Defence, but we are working on Home Affairs requirement as well, which includes the policing as well as the border securities, etc. We are, since we are part of IDEX, we have incubated in T-Hub, and T-Hub has been very long-standing partner for us, and they are giving us, valuable guidance, what we need. Being a startup, we don't know much of the things in terms of processes. Sometimes we lack the understanding of how the purchases happens. So T-Hub has been very kind and they have been helping. We are incubated here, which is our fortunate combinations. And at the same time, they are giving us open mind thought. We have grown significantly. Last 3 years, we have backed more than 400 numbers of systems order from Indian Army and Air Force combined. This makes us the largest company for supplying anti-drone systems in India in terms of numbers. I would say in single line that we exist because of the policy changes. See, earlier, so I have a 8 years background before starting my own. I was used to work in a defense in a large private company. And so I've seen it from 2006 onwards, the defense businesses. And it was used to be so tedious and so cumbersome to interact earlier with the customer. Okay. And with all these policy changes, recently what we have observed that customer is actually eager to tell us their problem, and when we have solutions which we think that they are likely going to solve that problems, they are very eager to allow you to test them. They are helping us in testing. They even give you their own inputs. They are actually helping us to improve the products. And the testimony of that product is the drone system, the anti-drone rifle. When we got the order for development of anti-drone system, we didn't have the portable system in our kitty. Okay, and Air Force walked us through their problem statement in terms of what they want and how they want. We designed specifically for Air Force from scratch, and that's how they, since they were part of the journey, they liked it. And this whole policy change, when we say, allowed us to get into partnering mode with customer rather than customer mode, and that gives us a product for them also and for us also, which is actually meeting their requirement. And so there are many things like they asked us that keep us, something for upgrade, because they were asking us that down the line things may change, then we need to upgrade in India. So we kept those channels, those space inside. And if suppose we were not part of that journey, then we would have developed something which might not be useful for Air Force, at the end. So this is exactly what we are saying, that there are policy changes which are so beneficial for startup, any company which is starting. IDEX is one of the more. Even in tendering, the startups are getting benefit in terms of level playing. Okay, but earlier there was no level playing, so we can't fight up with the big companies. We can't fight up with the companies which are bringing white label goods. Okay, people buy from China, buy from here and there, and then they put it with their own name. We can't bid them and win the contract. But now the policies are so matured and so developed that it is so easy to compare paper to paper and oranges to oranges, apple to apple. So this is really good, and it is really true what you say.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to my Startup TV.
The presence of so many startups, the innovators here, makes the visit to Hyderabad very fruitful one. So far, procurement has been looked at bringing some very costly high technology equipment from abroad for the forces. To allay the fears of the local manufacturers, in 2021 December, our Prime Minister declared that the defense procurement will be primarily from local industry. It has been written down on in stone. It cannot be violated just like that. So, if you think that defense forces require a particular type of equipment now or in future, you should start innovating, because you stand a very, very good chance to become a part of their supply chain. The presence of so many startups, the innovators here, makes the visit to Hyderabad very fruitful one. So far, procurement has been looked at bringing some very costly high technology equipment from abroad for the forces. To allay the fears of the local manufacturers, in 2021 December, our Prime Minister declared that the defense procurement will be primarily from local industry. It has been written down on in stone. It cannot be violated just like that. So, if you think that defense forces require a particular type of equipment now or in future, you should start innovating, because you stand a very, very good chance to become a part of their supply chain.
We would now like to express our heartfelt gratitude and take the privilege to felicitate our esteemed guest, Shri Giridhar Mane, IAS Defence Secretary of India, for gracing us with his presence today. He is known for his illustrious career and distinguished service to the nation. Shri Mane has held various pivotal roles in both the central government and state governments, showcasing exceptional leadership and expertise. I humbly request Shri Giridhar Mane to grace us and share his thoughts on the future of Indian defense and aerospace ecosystem.
I am thankful to AgHub, Jayesh Ranjan, Srinivas Rao Garu, and the Anthony and his team of the dynamic AgHub team here. Reddy Garu is here, Satish is here, and many important defense sector industry leaders are here. Hyderabad is a beautiful city. It's always a pleasure to be here. And also, the presence of so many startups, the innovators here, makes the visit to Hyderabad very fruitful one. I would like to divide my comments into three parts. Firstly, I would like to tell you about the initiatives taken by government in procurement reforms. Secondly, in the innovative ecosystem reforms. Thirdly, quality reforms. Lastly, I would conclude by expressing what Government of India expects from the innovative ecosystem in the country. Firstly, coming to the procurement reforms. So far, procurement has been looked at bringing some very costly high technology equipment from abroad for the forces. To allay the fears of the local manufacturers, in 2021 December, our Prime Minister declared that the defense procurement will be primarily from local industry. Imports will be an exception. So it has been written down on in stone. It cannot be violated just like that. Any exception has to be approved by the Defense Minister himself, and if it required, it goes to the cabinet. So, if you think that defense forces require a particular type of equipment now or in future, you should start innovating, because you stand a very, very good chance to become a part of their supply chain. The second important thing which is done is that we have ensured that the procurement process itself is speeded up. It's delegated to various levels. Now, you have seen the emergency procurement recently. More than 100 contracts have been signed in a period of 6 months to 8 months, and many supplies also are taking place. Several of these are purely Indian designed, developed and manufactured. Similarly, we have the Make 1 and Make 2 programs also, where last year 2022-23 we have concluded more than 80 contracts with the local manufacturers. These can be very top order equipment like the tanks and infantry combat vehicles, and it can also be smaller equipment like spare parts, components of the various platforms we are using. Thirdly, in Make programs, that is Indian designed and developed manufacturing in India equipment, we are ensuring that orders are placed soon after the development is completed. In fact, the Make 1 and Make 2 programs are tied with the secure orders. Make 3, which also looks at technology transfer and manufacturing in India, is also tied to the guaranteed orders. So, in terms of ensuring that whoever designs and develops in the country is rewarded adequately, reforms are already in place to ensure that they get the returns. The next most important reform is that we are requiring each and every critical technology required for these platforms which our forces are procuring are designed and developed in India. Normally, what used to happen previously is that there will be several Indian companies manufacturing parts, components, but the company which gets the order for the entire platform used to import several of these components from abroad, despite having the local alternative. So we ensured that now, as per the new rules, the critical technologies have to be sourced from India. If they are already available, if they are not available, they have to be developed and manufactured in India. This is a major change. Why? Because so far, indigenous technology means it used to be labor component, it used to be the maintenance component, it used to be the documentation, it used to be the training. It never used to be the critical technology. It can be the metal bending, riveting and those kind of low technology equipment, but it never was high-end avionics or electronic systems, IT systems, etc., which used to be very critical. What happens is that if we buy the IT systems, the software of these platforms from abroad, we are constantly dependent upon the foreign suppliers. The Indian supplier never gets a chance to supply. Those things are a thing of the past now. Now, we have mandated that the IDDM means it shall be designed and developed in India. It has to be manufactured in India. Next, I will come to the innovative system reforms. We had IDEX program in 2018-19 that itself was a very great revolution. In fact, it for the first time established a very simple process to ensure that the innovators are given some support, some mentorship, some hand holding and also a small amount of grant. It used to be 1.5 crores. Later it was increased to 10 crores. Now, recently we have ensured that these innovators, these young people who have started the companies are also assured of the orders. They progress to the orders in a seamless fashion. It is not a very cumbersome process of going through several rounds of quality checks, etc. Because we are asking you to develop a particular technology, we agreed with you what it will perform, and you have developed according to that. The procurement from these companies has been simplified a lot. In fact, one of the officers from the services, Navy, Air Force or Army, will handhold you and ensure that the procurement process is also completed. One more important, very important change has been brought about. That is the spiral development. So far, we prescribe SQR, service quality requirements, at a particular level. It has to fly, if it's a drone, it has to fly up to 10,000 feet. If it flies up to 9,500 feet, we used to say, no, you have not met the SQR, so we cannot procure. Similar restrictions were there in many other requirements. So what we now say is that if you meet, say, 70% of the requirement, okay, we will place order for so many units. You still have a chance to increase it to the 10,000 feet and come back to us so that we can procure from you the remaining quantity. So the spiral development is going to be of great help to the innovators, as they are assured of orders even if they meet not 100% but 70 to 80% of the requirement also. This will ensure that you will not suffer in future. We are also thinking of doing one more thing. Just now, some of the people I interacted with told me that the initial seed capital is okay. You may give 1.5 crore, 10 crore or 25 crores, but the matching grant is causing a serious problem. We want to solve that. We are thinking of tying you with the platform manufacturer. Suppose you manufacture a component sub-assembly for a larger platform. We would like you to get in touch with the larger company which manufactures the platform and get the necessary funding from them. Apart from that, recently Finance Minister had a very detailed discussion with the Managing Director of SIDBI. She had instructed him to ensure that all the defense startups get the necessary funding at the lowest possible cost. The cost of capital has to be reduced for the startups in the country. So all necessary arrangements will be done for that. And from my side, from the defense ministry side, we will ensure that our companies, I have 16 of them, will ensure that they will come to your support. They will not ask for your equity. Please don't worry. They will extend you in terms of a interest-free loan if you are developing a part, a subsystem, a component which will go into the platform they are manufacturing. I request other industry representatives here. I have representatives of Tata, Mahindra, Boeing, Safran, very large companies are present here. I would also request them to handhold the startups, and they have been doing it. In fact, when Honorable Prime Minister went to the US last June, he took along with him a large number of the startup innovators. There, he personally ensured that they get the necessary support from the American industry ecosystem. Just before he reached there, he had asked me to organize an event where Indian startups get an exposure to the American defense industry. So we had organized that IndusX symposium there, where many top US companies had interacted with Indian startups and have given several orders to these companies. So in terms of connect between industry, the established industry, which get most of the large orders, and the startups which provide the critical technologies needed, has been already started, and I hope it will in times to come will become very, very strong and be mutually beneficial to the large corporates as well as the startups. Now I come to the third important reform which government has undertaken recently is the quality reforms. Quality control and quality assurance are very key to defense industry. You understand, one particular batch of ammunition which resulted in poor quality has caused the death of many soldiers a few years ago, 3-4 years ago. So quality control is to be given topmost importance in all the defense related manufacturing processes. So we are generally very careful. We have a very large organization with several thousands of people working for it, which will check the quality of various equipment, arms and ammunition we procure. However, many times it becomes so tedious that the manufacturers get worried that this process will never end and we may end up with no order in next few years. That will cast a shadow on their financials and will result in them getting out of the defense sector. It has happened many times previously also. So to ensure that the processes are very fair, objective and not very time consuming, we have introduced several reforms recently. Firstly, we are providing a single window system for quality control. So far we have been asking the manufacturers to go around several of the laboratories, several of the offices to get each of the systems to be certified. Now we say that if you are manufacturing, say, a battle tank, you can go to only one office and get all the systems certified through that office. He will handhold you. He will take forward the certification process on his own. There will not be multiple visits to multiple offices. The second important thing is the remote and virtual quality control. Now we have huge developments in IT and instrumentation. Many of you are fully aware of it, which will enable us to do the quality control, quality assurance work sitting in a remote area. There is no need to be physically be present. Right now, I have deployed several hundreds of my officers in these companies, manufacturing companies. I would like to get out of these offices. Maybe in a central office, they can sit and watch what is being done in these offices through remotely operated cameras, etc. A part of this is also the automated quality control processes. Many of the machines these days come with the recording of the parameters of the goods being manufactured. They can be read and understood clearly whether the processes are proper or not from a remote location. That also has been enabled now and many companies are already utilizing this. And lastly, in this series of reforms is the self-certification. If you have reached a certain stage in the manufacturing process, you can certify yourself that this is according to so and so standard, so and so milk standard, we confirm, so we can supply to you. Or third party certification. If there is NABL certified laboratory, they can come and check and give a certificate to you which will be acceptable in the ministry. Like this, we want to declutter the quality control and quality assurance processes so that your procurement, the manufactured goods, the goods you have manufactured can be procured without any problem. So these are the three types of reforms which government has undertaken. I have listed only important ones. There are several of these things because our procurement process, quality assurance process is very complicated one. We had to change, we have to modify, we have to delete many of these processes. It is much simpler now. It can be much more simpler. I need your advice on that. But I have stated some of the important ones. Now, what do I expect from Defense Ministry side to the startups? we have issued lot of challenges through IDEX recently and through Aditi only last month. I would request all of you to work on them because there are guaranteed orders in them. If I ask for a small component of a battle tank or one of my, similarly the challenges are needed for actual life uses. We need to deploy these equipment as soon as you make them ready. That's why IDEX program in last 2-3 years has resulted in several contracts. I think 34 or 35 contracts have already been signed, and we are in the process of signing many more. More than 300 projects have been awarded for development under IDEX. So I want you to concentrate on the 5 positive indigenization lists issued by the ministry so that I can procure more and more goods from you. And also from the Aditi and IDEX challenges. The second one is the care for quality and the user friendliness. I was trying to procure an assault rifle for Indian Army. This assault rifle is like almost like a part of your body for a soldier who is guarding the border. It has to be very, very user friendly. It should not get heated up. It should be very easy to use. It should not malfunction, whether in Ladakh or is in Rajasthan. It has to be so good that the soldier will not feel that it's a burden on him. When I compare what is made by, say, 6R in US and what is made by our own defense PSU in our country, of course, our own equipment is fully indigenous, 100%. But the look, feel, and the quality all have much to improve. So, when you are coming up with a product, look at the design of it carefully, user friendliness of it carefully, and also the quality assurance also very carefully. Without these, we cannot really excel in any sector. Quality of actual functioning and quality of look and feel are also very, very important for getting success in procurement processes. The very look of your equipment should be so appealing. I would like you to work on it. Thirdly, for the capital, I assume that none of you want to part with equity in your companies. Don't get disheartened. We are working on the funding mechanisms. We understand that going through the defense ministry's processes is very tedious. We are in the process of reforming. We have already done a few. More are in the offing. But do approach the funding agencies, the DPSUs, without hesitation. We don't want to steal your IPR in the DPSUs. We are willing to fund you without any caveats, without any very difficult conditions. We would like you to succeed. Ultimately, if you succeed, we succeed, and our country's security is really in good hands. So, with this appeal, and again thanking AgHub, which has come up as one of the best incubators in the country, and maybe it will rival some of the best in the world. Congratulating the team here, congratulating all the innovators here. I take your leave. Jai Hind.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.
This has been a privilege, just being part of this ecosystem for the last few years. And what I'm here to tell you a little bit about the story. But before I get that, respected sir, Shri Girdhar Armaneji, Shri Jayesh Ranjanji, and rest of my colleagues here from different industries, startups, and PSUs, I want to tell about that how over the last few years we have looked India very differently, within Collins Aerospace, within the world, how we are seeing that. And what we are seeing very interestingly is that India is becoming largely the global hub for innovation, research in aerospace and defense. And so when we started exploring the last few years, we understood that partnerships with T-Hub, we can really get into the Indian ecosystem, we can understand the true power of startups, and we can see how they can really solve the global problems that are there, plaguing in industry across aerospace and industry, in various forms. So with that, quick introduction. So I represent Collins Aerospace. It's a 100-year-old company, obviously through various mergers and acquisitions. We became Collins in 2018. We've been in India for about 30 years now. We have actually had an engineering site based out of Hyderabad. We recently opened a very big site in Bangalore. And now we're doing even operations in Bangalore as well. And what we've realized that beyond engineering design and manufacturing, there is a lot of interesting research collaboration opportunities. And that's how we started this Powered by Collins initiative. We opened up with T-Hub last year. That was our first year exploring the concept that can we give 4 or 5 global collaboration challenges that we are seeing that daily our customers are asking. And while we're trying to solve those problems, we see there is a need for acceleration, there's a need for quick productization. And we opened that up to the global ecosystem. The best thing was we actually used an Indian startup accelerator to reaching out for the global platform. And we had quite a big success last year. We had several incoming proposals. We shortlisted 1 or 2. We had 1 or 2 success stories. And that made us confident for us to come back again a second year and say that let's actually expand this. And in fact, bring those problem statements over here where Indian startups are doing very, very well. So bring in AI problems, bring in data analytics problems, and actually pose that over here. So that's what I'm very happy to share. The Powered by Collins initiative is open right now. And you can go in, you can actually find about it. You can find the 4 big startup collaboration opportunities we are looking at. And all we're really requesting you is through that, give us an introduction of how you think these problems can be solved. And then let's convene with some of the business owners, some of the people who have actually created those challenges and work together. So in closing thoughts, I feel this is just the beginning of what Collins is doing in India today. There is huge potential beyond just the workforce, the 5,000 plus Collins employees who are across Hyderabad and Bangalore. There is a whole ecosystem where we see potential for huge collaborative innovation, huge research, and obviously reaching from here to the world, bringing solutions which are designed, developed, researched in India, but are deployed across the global landscape.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartupTV.
These startups are a range of sectors in drones, in anti-drones, in radar simulators, in cybersecurity, in control systems, jammers, electro-optics, material science, and so on,
which are relevant for the stakeholders and armed forces in our country. Like any other startup journey, this sector also requires lots of hand-holding and support. We just had a roundtable a while ago. Startups are able to understand the real problem statements that you face, get mentorship from you. Many of you have venture arms, get possibly some early stage funding support also.
And what we are seeing very interestingly is that India is becoming largely the global hub for innovation, research in aerospace and defense. And so when we started exploring the last few years, we understood that partnerships with T-Hub, we can really get into the Indian ecosystem, we can understand the true power of startups, and we can see how they can really solve the global problems that are there.
Firstly, coming to the procurement reforms. Procurement has been looked at bringing some very costly high technology equipment from abroad for the forces. Imports will be an exception. So it has been written down on in stone. It cannot be violated just like that. Any exception has to be approved by the defense minister himself. and if it required, it goes to the cabinet. Similarly, we have the Make 1 and Make 2 programs also, where last year, 2022-23, we have concluded more than 80 contracts with the local manufacturers.
Opportunities for startups in defense innovations. Let me start by giving you one example. I started as a startup. I joined that company in 2010. I was the first person to join in the defense group. We should, along with my subsidiaries, do about 1700 crores of business, and 1300 crores out of that is exports. Defense Secretary did mention about the quality of products. I can assure you, sir, the guns which we have exported are better looking than any other gun in the world, and we believe we have a world beater. So we can assure you on the quality. We have a target of touching 5 trillion in next 2 years' time. We are also wanting that 25% of that growth should be coming from manufacturing.
How can the Indian government and established defense firms, they can help startups to integrate better into the defense innovation ecosystem? What do you think that the startups need to do from their side?
Defense was normally kept away for all the even startups and in the industries also. A lot of schemes government has brought in, like Defense Secretary has mentioned, early stage startups or deep tech startups, funding is a question mark from India.
That it gives an opportunity for the young innovators. I can tell you my experience in the Air Force is because we always have to go through the ministry, through the DRDO. Ultimately, the user never really comes face to face with the actual innovator.
Second thing is, when we look at this space, standard issues apply. One is, if I'm funding something in a B2C space, I know that there are, 500 million Indians, and I can see a large market, and I can do the multiples, right?
So after the success of Chandrayaan-1, there was a scientist from ISRO who had visited our university. I was studying at SRM University in Chennai. Definitely very excited about the idea, but I wasn't really sure if something like that was possible. And then our university decided to fund that program, and we ended up building this whole satellite.
We work majorly in 3 areas. One is the counter drone, basically anti-drone system. Second is on the heating systems for the high altitude and extremely cold environment. In the third area, what we work is in the gyroscopes and accelerometers, which is the inertial systems.
Different startups would go to a venture capitalist and ask them for money. We did not go to any venture capitalists. We literally raised money from angel investors. Now we have a lot of VCs who want to come on board. So instead of us starting from VCs, we're now ending up with them in our second leg of our journey.
Us launching 4 missions in the last 2 years is a strong testament to how the government is trying to support space technology companies to, go into space. From number of Indian assets in orbit, I think roughly we have probably 1/6 or 1/10 of total number of space objects in orbit.
We are actually using instant portable non-electric cooling technology to develop an instant cold vest for firefighters, especially those who are with the Indian Navy, who will fight the fires on the shipboard. We are making a cold vest. Simultaneously, the same technology that we are using for fire protection, we are also using the same technology for first aid applications in sports and other related injuries. As we do with the cooling technology, latent heat to comfort technologies also has a recent patent granted on our instant portable non-electric heating technology as well.
Fantastic opportunities for us to collaborate, whichever sector you belong to, you're a startup, you're a corporate, or of course even government as well, to come forward and shake hands for not only sparing valuable time, but also the fact that he patiently heard us.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.
We are also recognizing several outstanding defense startups. We believe that this will be a very strong motivation for them in the time to come, followed by panel discussion.
We will ensure that this vertical remains strong, and tomorrow through IDEX and Aditi and other programs, we are able to support more and more startups also.
I feel this is just the beginning of what Collins is doing in India today. There is huge potential beyond just the workforce, the 5,000 plus Collins employees who are across Hyderabad and Bangalore. There is a whole ecosystem where we see potential for huge collaborative innovation, huge research, and obviously reaching from here to the world.
Firstly, I would like to tell you about the initiatives taken by government in procurement reforms. Secondly, in the innovative ecosystem reforms. Thirdly, quality reforms. Lastly, I would conclude by expressing what Government of India expects from the innovative ecosystem in the country.
Two constituents of that ecosystem, or the so-called the industrial base, are technology and the manufacturing competence. What we need to take a look is at the technology ecosystem.
So my first question will probably go to you, sir. I think, like he said, there are almost 850 plus startups in the defense and aerospace innovation ecosystem today. How can the Indian government and established defense firms, they can help startups to integrate better into the defense innovation ecosystem? What do you think that the startups need to do from their side? And what do you think that the ecosystem, senior players in the ecosystem like the DPSUs or the corporates need to do to help them integrate better?
The startups here, if they have to beat the world market and not just the Indian people, the product really has to be a technologically advanced or first of its kind product. Then you need to spend a lot, both funding wise and otherwise, a lot into the deep technology. This is one of the issues what it is.
Gives an opportunity for the young innovators to get in touch with the end users. I can tell you my experience in the Air Force is because we always have to go through the ministry, through the DRDO. Ultimately, the user never really comes face to face with the actual innovator.
And let's say you're a startup and you're looking at a VC, early stage, early growth is great, but if they don't have a B2B strategy, you may not get supported long term unless they have a very strong LP network. That's the way I kind of think about it.
Our university decided to fund that program and we ended up building this whole satellite. And during the process of building the satellite, I realized that, we are a country with 1 billion people, but, we've sent missions to moon.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartupTV.
I'm Dr. Vishal Rao. I'm glad to be a part of this wonderful fest today of the Emerge 2024. It's a very new beginning, and I'm recollecting that beautiful old quote that says that if you think something is impossible, do not disturb the team that's trying to achieve this. I think the team out here pulled off something for the first time on a beachside festival with startups, and the vibrancy, the entire enthusiasm, the entire networking was all very inspiring, from the PSA's office to the state government's participation to the innovation teams that came up to the young, brilliant startups, innovators, inventors, to the wonderful talk that Anurag gave about innovations and about how we can think differently and how India should move from Make in India to now the next Create in India. A lot of ideas were shared and exchanged, and I'm hoping and looking forward to the next event of 2025, which I think will be more meaningful, more stronger, more robust, and exciting to more of the startups who are going to come with more funding opportunities, which will be able to have startups go back with some amount of reassurance of their future to secure a future which is reimagined for the ecosystem that's going to benefit the state, the country in a new way and help India position ourselves internationally in a bigger way. Thank you.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartupTV.
Hi everyone, I am Vinayak from Chikmagalur and we started Ragnarok Furniture in Chikmagalur last year 2023 and we are producing dining tables, teapoys, live tables and clocks, and our main intention is to increase the beauty of the house with our tables and clocks, and just support us and yeah.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartupTV.
I'm from Tech Talks. We work with B2B technology-driven companies and focused on engineering, manufacturing, and software product companies. We provide end-to-end services in technical content development. Our offerings include technical manuals, interactive content, learning content, and process documentation. So we decided to participate in Emerge 2024 because we thought that a lot of new entrepreneurs and startups will be participating. So it will be a good opportunity for us to network with them, to understand their requirements, how they are promoting their own products, and how we can really integrate our services with them. So with that objectives, we actually participated in Emerge 24. Thank you.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartupTV.
Little about the activities that TASK does and how it's helping the colleges and students and industry in ensuring that what we've been talking since morning about the paradoxical situation where you have industry scrambling for talent and you have people worried about jobs and other things. So I would request you to first talk a little about TASK and then probably we can go further in the conversation.
Sure. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Pankaj and FTCCI and everyone involved in this program. Talking about TASK, I think the very simple thing that happened was when the state got bifurcated, 1,400 plus organizations were surveyed only to find out that the less than 10% locals were employed and the people who were employed were not meeting up to the expectations of the industry. And that's where TASK was created. 10 years forward, if you look at it, we have skilled close to about 9 lakh plus students, but skilling students isn't good enough unless until you skill the faculty members. 18,000 plus faculty members on pedagogy as well as technology, and we are industry agnostic, as I said. So we work with about 750 colleges, or should I say 750 colleges benefit from our programs. We work with 80 plus corporate partners all across India, offering 110 plus programs to all the colleges. And that's what TASK is today. Looking at our pillars, we have 3 pillars. Education, no, we don't run education institutions, but we look at the industry, we look at what the academia is providing, and if you look at the way we were set up, we were supposed to be a bridge between industry, academia, and the government institutions, and that's how TASK was set up. And that was our prime focus. But over the years, we have moved slightly. We have got a 2-pronged vision now. First is making our youth employable. So anything, and we don't have a logo here, but if you look at our logo, it's a tree, a learning tree, which has got a fruit on each and every branch, which means any initiative that we take has to result in either a livelihood, a job, or an entrepreneurial opportunity. The second is, of course, employability, where we, more than 500 plus organizations advertise their entry-level jobs on our portal itself, and they are able to get their students. So all across all industries we work with. And talking about the models are very simple. We sit over and above the academic curriculum, right? And students, we register colleges with us, and students in those colleges, I've got a team of about 35 faculty members who go and conduct classes over there. We also do virtual classes, but this is a laddered approach. So what we realized early on was that skilling in the final year doesn't make help. It's more like eating a 500 mg capsule before going for your medical examination. Doesn't help anyone. And that's where we staggered the entire learning approach. So just to give you a very rudimentary example, AutoCAD. We start with the basic AutoCAD in first year, second semester. Second year is user level. Third year is advanced or professional level. And that's typically how we run all our programs. They are staggered. We also do this thing which is a different kind of a thing. So apart from technology, we also talk about behaviors and we also talk about domains. So that's the kind of thing that we do. Second is more of a finishing school model where we work with the industry vertical itself and ensure that we run short-term skilling programs along with industry partners or ourselves to skill for a particular industry. 70% of those people get placed. And the third is a very unique model and has played a huge part in the growing ecosystem of Telangana, is what we call as first day, first hour productivity program, where we work with a single organization itself. We customize the training program as per the requirement of that organization. If they are looking at about 50 people, we'll train about 100 to start with. We co-create the curriculum. And if I don't have the subject matter experts or the aircraft engines in my labs, I would much rather go and train on the shop floor of the industry itself, which has been a very, very successful model over here. Because it's a win-win, as the Honorable Special Chief Secretary also was mentioning. Instead of a lose-lose, it has to be a win-win situation for all. So that is a helicopter view of what we do. Of course, I would like to also, since entrepreneurship was also being discussed, we run a very unique program called I4TS, Innovating for Telangana. And this runs with a punchline called Samajika Avashkaranalu Sarlamaina Jivitanki, Social Innovation for Simplifying Lives. This is a virtual program, as it was said that, entrepreneurship cannot be taught in a classroom. We run this program virtually, and instead of diving deep straight into the entrepreneurship development program, we have an innovation and entrepreneurship mindset creation program first, which is 7 weeks linked to the SDGs. And then, for example, last year, 20,584 students got, or youth got impacted, I should say. Anyone in the age group of 18 to 35 can enroll for this program in Telangana and undergo this program. The videos are available online, and I'm happy to say, Pankaj, that last year we got the Scotch Gold Award for this program as a unique initiative that was run. So we bring it down from 20,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to roughly about 500 ideas of 1,500 people. Then they undergo a complete 20 weeks kind of a program, which is the entrepreneurship development, the mission model canvas, the business plans, and everything else. But we are slightly different again. Every startup, every entrepreneur wants themselves to be invested in, but they have never sold anything in their life. So we have a module in between called as Angdi or Mandi, where you actually have to go and sell something, because you can't teach consumer behavior in a classroom. You can't teach how to handle your first rejection, or what should you be selling, features, advantages, or benefits. And that's where we have a Karo and Sikho kind of a model built into between. So that is a helicopter view of what TASK does. Thank you.
Wonderful and very refreshing. So, we've been discussing this in the past also. One of the things that I think we share as a common idea is about the whole concept of problem solving, hackathons and industry problems. And you saw today's initiative is very much based on that. I'll bet it's not a one-day hackathon, it's a 6 months hackathon or an 8-month hackathon. I want to know from you, because again, you've worked so closely with colleges and students, what has been your experience in running these hackathon kind of programs? And do you think we are in the right direction in that sense?
Oh, absolutely. I think today the biggest problem is, and Pankaj, I think at the cost of repeating myself, you have of course heard it multiple times, and some of the college people also would have heard this, but I ask a question to every college or any student that I meet in any forum, which is, if I have to empty the Indian Ocean using a bucket, how much time will it take, right? And believe you me, 99% of the people say, oh, it cannot be done, right? Because the problem is they don't look at logical thinking. Computational thinking is just not there, right? Simple problem, size of Indian Ocean, size of bucket. If the size of bucket is as big as the Indian Ocean, it will take a couple of seconds only, right? But that thinking process is not there. Unfortunately, our educational institutions also today are only teaching syntaxes. And that is where the biggest challenge comes in. As a result of which, what you said in the beginning itself, we are creating, I don't want to use the word glorified clerks kind of a word, but yes, we are only creating people for the service and operations industry in IT. We are not having product mindset. And for creating that product mindset, it is important to have computational thinking, foundations, focus on the foundation. Today it's Python, tomorrow it will be Cobra, then what? Again you will go and learn the syntaxes. And that is the challenge, and that's where I think this kind of a solution that got discussed today is going to be the solution. Because, and Sir, Dr. Professor Desai, to answer your question also, I think hackathons are the best way, because today research, as you rightly said, research academia takes time, industry wants it as of yesterday. Hackathons probably are the best way, sir, to bring the best of the academia as well as the industry mentors with the brightest of minds to solve problems. And that is what is most important. Solving hackathons, doing something, getting 1,000 people in a room in your college, etc., to solve a problem for 2 days is good. But then what? What next? I think it's important to have a sustained kind of a thing, right? As Professor Saab also said, you don't create things, it is built over time. That's where it is most important, that we should have a sustained kind of a thing. And today, if we look at it, 60% of our students who are in college, their parents haven't been to college, right? They're first generation learners. So the role that mentors would play over here, right, as part of the platform, as part of Talent Farm and this initiative, I think would be very, very useful for these kids to help them. We come from a very simple standpoint. If you can't stand the sight of blood, you should not become a doctor or join the defense forces, correct? Attrition today in the industry is high because of only one reason. It's bear child, it's herd mentality. Everyone follows. If my peer pressure is also there, if you want to call it that way, yes. But yes, it's the same thing. Look at your competencies, look at your skills, your abilities, etc. And then if you are able to do it, right, and you can skill people. And that's what we have seen always, right? So you should have for example, just 30 seconds, so I'll take more. Safran, when they were setting up their aircraft manufacturing facility over here, we looked at not only the skills but competencies, right? So hand dexterity, 3D visualization, spatial thinking. These were the competencies that were required over there. We didn't select students. They were wanting aeronautical engineering. We took them to the polytechnics, diploma students, electronic and mechanical. And what we did was we gave them nuts and bolts, how quickly you could fasten them, unfasten them, right? There was a sheet on which there were 5 pins, 4 pins, etc. in different orientations. They had plastic discs. They had to keep it over there. So what we checked was how, what are your competencies which will help the aircraft industry. As a result of which, out of these people were creating cable harnesses for the aircraft engines. Out of the first 1,000 cable harnesses that were sent to France, not even one got rejected. Of course, I don't have competencies on aircraft engine training, etc. So Safran, our partner under the first day first half productivity, trained those people, and none of them got rejected. As a result of which Telangana also benefited. We got a 1,500 crore MRO opening over here. So I think, it's practical trainings, helping people apply their mindsets under the guidance of a mentor is what actually is the game changer.
I think there are 2 or 3 things running in my mind even as you're talking about this. One is we can probably use this platform to advise all the colleges that we have to now think beyond hackathons, because I remember distinctly in 2014, a group of us, we call ourselves Hyderabad Hackers, we got together and created a hackathon, open hackathon, where almost 50 colleges had participated. This was with Computer Society of India. Vaishali was part of that group, couple of others who are here were part of that group. And then over a period of time, that was then to bring the culture of hackathon. Those were days when we had to explain to some of the principals that hackathon is not a bad word. It's not like security hacking. It's, to build something quickly. But then now I think it's become a common knowledge, and thanks to Smart India hackathons and so many other hackathons, it's a very common thing. I think now is the stage to graduate to what I probably call as product-a-thon. Pick the best ideas of the hackathon and make it into a 6 months to 9 months sustainable initiative so that it actually becomes a product and sees the light of the day. And the benchmark for that has to be that people use it or people pay for it, right? Unless people pay for it, you're always going to get some guests from the industry who will come and say very good, because you've invited them. They also want to be good to the students, so they'll say very good, and then we all take solace in that. I think we have to go beyond that, stretch the benchmark and say now, if it's good, pay for it. And then you'll really know the feedback, whether it's worth paying or not. I think I would request all the colleges and students here, because I know students are now so active, they conduct hackathons on their own. Ensure that at the end of the hackathon, someone is paying for that. If they are paying for it, then it's worth it. Otherwise, make a 6 months deadline that in 6 months it will be developed to a stage where it can be paid. The second thing I think that you were talking about is also very interesting, where it is about how all the partners come together, because none of us are self-sufficient. And I think that's where the partnership with FTCCI and Task, or FTCCI T-Hub, FTCCI T-Works, because in individual capacity, I think all the organizations have been trying to do something. I know of so many mentors sitting here in the first row who in their individual capacity have been doing a lot. Whenever we meet them, whenever we talk to them, they say we're working with a bunch of students. I think it's time to get together and make it as a force multiplier. And finally, the concept of mentors, which earlier Professor Desai was also talking in terms of professor of practice or mentor, like Sadhguru says, mentor is like GPS, Guru Positioning System. I think we all need a mentor in our life, right? Because they provide the direction, and they are like role models who create fuel in our body. Can I become even 5% of this person? I mean, every time I meet someone like Professor Desai, that's what is the excitement I get, right? Can I become even 5% of this person? And that's what drives us to doing things. So I'm glad that you brought these points. Sir, I would also like you to dwell a little about this whole concept that we are trying to launch, where we want a continuous dialogue between the industry and academia. And even as I'm saying this, I hate to call this as industry academia. I wish we can come up with a new term where it's one team, Team India or Team One kind of a thing, where we have student representatives also, college representatives also, and some of the industry. So we would request Task also to support, facilitate this.
Sure. And I think very valid points, and of course what you said is talking about process of practice. Task was the first to start this as a process itself, and if you look at the Niti Aayog best practices 3 years ago, they spoke about process of practice over there also, because we have been using it, and of course Professor Desai was a governing council member earlier on of Task, so he's very much aware of it. And coming to the second part of it, I think there are certain things that we as industry and academia have to avoid to make this collaboration happen. Today, the very first thing when a person from a college, an academic institution meets an industry is he will say, can you come to my college for a campus recruitment, right? And that is the first place where you have drawn a line, because the industry thinks that you will keep on pestering him till he comes there, right? Instead of that, if we change our conversation and say, can you please come and interact with our students? It's a different story altogether, right? I think the reason why this has not moved, and absolutely right, we have been talking about academia and industry collaborations, and we'll keep on talking till the cows go home, but point is, we have to change our mindsets itself. And that is what is most important from both the points, right? Today, at least thanks to hackathons, and if we are talking about sustained hackathons or industry chairs that are there in multiple institutions like institutions of repute, IITs, etc., have got the industry chairs, right, where they fund for research. Now, if those kind of things keep on happening, I think the involvement of industry will automatically increase in the academic institutions. Second thing is, I think academic institutions also need to realize that research, of course, as I always keep on saying, for good music, you need musicians which are skilled, right? But you also need the Bachs and the Beethovens, the researchers, without which good music will never happen, right? And that's where it is important for the academia to stop doing academic research, but look at industry-oriented research. And that is where things will change. Because I think that's when people, today what is happening is, you need an interpreter to talk between these two, because these two people are talking different languages. And that is what this cell has to do. The cell has to play the part of an interpreter, but at the same time helping both the parties to understand that, look, these are some of the words of that party and these are some of the words of this party. Ensuring that they start talking in a common language. And the thing is, today, academic institutions have to look at their students also differently, right? Because if we talk about the future, no one can predict the future, right? People tried and they failed miserably. But the fact still remaining is that we are in a, I'm sure some of you would have seen a boat race, right? When you start rowing, you are sitting opposite to the direction in which you are moving. And that is what is happening right now. Academic institutions have to involve the industry, because industry is the fastest to accept change. Universities, etc., move at a glacial pace, right? Industry can only guide you and tell you what could be the future. For example, if I look at it, AI, ML, and all these base technologies, IoT, 5G, etc., are going to be the foundation. And all other technologies are going to be on top of it. That is what IR 4.0, 5.0 is going to bring. How many of our educational institutions today, the professors are even aware or have gone to a manufacturing facility? I'm not talking about IT right now, I'm talking about manufacturing, right? And if you look at, okay, let me talk about automobile engineering, right? How this field has completely changed. You need to know about cell, so you need to have chemistry, right? You need to know mechanical engineering, because at the end of the day, it's a moving part. You need to know cyber security, because someone can hack your audio system, because all cars are connected, and know where you're going for your dinner. You need to understand AI ML, because the battery which is generating the power has to get, it's going to use an AI logic, an ML logic. You need to know about electronics and electrical, because distribution has to happen. Earlier, you need to have only ICE knowledge, and that was it. And that is where industry today needs to be part of all academic boards and play a real part over there in ensuring that curriculum changes. We have to change the curriculum, as of yesterday. And that is where industry can play a part. Of course, academia into research, into helping test beds. If you are trying something new, the colleges have got so many students. Industry looks at group discussions, etc. But have you ever looked at the college as a test bed for doing your group discussions, etc., trying out your technologies, trying out your various things? We have not been looking at common goal of how we can support each other, and that's there. And task will be absolutely, as our definition says, a bridge between academia, industry, and the government institutions. Happy to play that part.
Thank you, sir. No, and I'm glad that, and I just want to re-emphasize the point that I think as academia, we should get smart to sell our value proposition in a much better way. rather than looking at ourselves as a seeker. I think if we can present ourselves as a equal and say that this is what we can offer, this is what is our students offering, this is what is our offering, I think it makes a lot of difference. I think that language and that has to change. And as you were talking about the complicated technologies, Manish and me were exchanging smiles to say, thank God we completed our engineering before it got complicated. Because I think it's very tough for these kids here, because they have to learn what we learned also, and they have to learn what is present and future also. So I think life is becoming very complicated for them.
I think they need to focus more on the basics, right? There's only one building called Hawa Mahal, which is a building without foundation, right? So ensure that your foundations are more strong, and that is more important.
So, but taking a little liberty here, the problem is you will talk about basics, and next session Rajesh will come and talk about blockchain and Web3. And Avnish will talk about cloud and say everything is on the cloud. So,
so if your basics are strong, I think all that.
So I am on student side, sir. I am confused, thoroughly confused.
No, I think technologies will keep on changing, right? It doesn't matter, but if your basics are strong, right? And today, so let me just digress a bit for a minute. If you look at it earlier, the skilling used to be a T-shaped, right? Where you knew a lot of things, but you had your domain expertise in one single area, right? Moving ahead, skilling will be a pie. You will know a lot of things. You would have your domain expertise in one single area, and the second would be all your things, what we call as 21st century skills, leadership skills, higher order thinking skills, growth mindsets, AI, ML, cloud, blockchain, cyber security, all these things would come over there. And plus, here is the best part, you also need a subdomain. And that is how things are going to move now, right? So skilling is going to be very different than the skilling that we know today. In fact, you are saying the students are confused. If I'm given a wish today to be reborn, I would like to be born as a youth in this generation and this age. The kind of opportunities, the kind of technologies, the kind of things that are available today, they can, really change the world.
Absolutely. No, I share that with you, and we can go on with this conversation forever. But in the interest of time, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for your time and for your views, and I'm sure.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Abhishek Krishna. I'm an oncologist working at KMC Mangalore. I was associated with the Emerge 2024 as one of the team members. One of its kind event where, Beachside Startup Festival, which is probably the first time happening in India, where a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startups, a lot of students, budding entrepreneurs could come here, meet the people, meet the persons, meet the investors, talk to them, have a good interaction, and carry forward their ideas and carry forward their innovations. We also had an ideathon that was specifically focused on one non-student crowd and the non-student crowd. We got a lot of entries. It was a very good experience throughout here. So we look forward to host more of such such programs in the future in Mangalore, because Mangalore is has a lot of medical colleges, a lot of engineering colleges. Talent is immense. So Mangalore being a tier 2 city, it is high time that we build up an ecosystem here, ecosystem of startups, of innovations. So Mangalore should lead the world. That is what our intention is of Brand Mangalore. So let us all work together towards that, and let us host more and more such sessions and such programs in Mangalore, so that we lead, that Mangalore can lead from the front for the world. Thank you.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartupTV.
This evening I'll try to talk a little bit about our Technology Enabling Center. And I think this is a very good opportunity. When I came here, I was very happy to see the opportunity to meet different people in different areas in which we are working. We have here innovators, we have startups, we have incubators, and we have other support systems. So it is very nice to see such a interesting group working towards development of technologies and solving the problems of the society. So it's indeed a great opportunity, and I am happy to be here with all of you. So what I'll try to do is try to explain what we are doing as a technology enabling center. Now, often people know about entrepreneurs, people know about incubators, but what is this technology enabling center? So this is a rather new concept, and the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, has started this. So we are one of the centers, technology enabling centers at Nitte University, established by the Department of Science and Technology. Next slide, please. So why do we need this technology enabling center? So now on one hand, we have academic institutions. So Mangalore is full of academic institutions, Mangalore and the surrounding areas. So we have engineering institutions, medical institutions, science institutions. And in all these institutions, there are a lot of very active scientists who are doing research, publishing papers. So now what happens to the output of this research, findings of this research? So when scientists publish, of course, scientists are mainly interested in publication. They are at the basic principle, or they are at a research finding, which may have a potential to become a technology. But for this principle or a finding, research finding, to become technology, there is a long journey that has to take place. So from a research finding, you may have to develop a concept, and the concept has to be proved as a proof of concept, and then it has to be validated. So we call this as a ladder of technology readiness level. Of course, this actually terminology comes from NASA. So they introduced this concept of technology readiness level. So most of the academic institutions are at the this end, where they are having research findings which may become technologies. So academic institutions may go up to, say, level 3 or level 4, where they show a proof of concept. But then if this is to go to become a technology, there is much more work needed. So there is a big gap, which is often referred to as the valley of death. That is because most of the findings, we say, ends up in shelves as publications. So further, nothing happens to that. So that gap, there is a big gap. So what is needed to be done to fill this gap? So there, maybe many times biology researchers are interested in working on a single, they have a focused area. So they are generally only restricted to their own discipline. But then if it has to become technology, for example, a biological finding, you say one plant has a anti-cancer activity. So a researcher may find this. But then if that plant, you have to have a product developed from that. You may need a chemist who knows about the phytochemicals. You need pharmacologists who may know how to develop drugs out of these phytochemicals. And then you need people who can do clinical trials, animal experiments. So you need a multidisciplinary team before it can become a technology. So that stage is referred to as translational research. So now there is encouragement for doing this, and this is where we need multidisciplinary collaboration. So before the industry comes in, there is this big gap. Next slide, please. So this is where the DST thought that, of course, Government of India has been funding a lot of research. The ICMR, ICAR, DST, DBT, all have been funding a lot of research. But when they looked at how many of them become technologies, they found that there are very few. So what is the gap and how the government can facilitate this? So DST then thought to establish this technology enabling center. So what we do in a technology enabling center is to connect academic institutions and industry, and we even within academic institutions, different disciplines. We try to bring together doctors and engineers. We had Dr. Rajendran here, who just now mentioned that generally doctors are working in their own areas and there is no crosstalk with other disciplines. So we facilitate this type of crosstalk between different disciplines and try to facilitate the development of technology. And as technology gets developed, you need to protect your intellectual property. So we need to have patents filed. So we try to facilitate this IPR protection. And then we are also facilitating transfer of technology. Now, research findings may be there not only with academic institutions, but also with the industry. So we also need to talk to the industry. They have certain observations. They have problems. So we need to understand what are the problems of the industry and try to see how academic institutions can address these problems of the industry. Next slide, please. So our mandate in a technology enabling center is to create an ecosystem for technology development in universities, academic institutions, and collaborate with the other academic institutions and also national laboratories and also with the industry. So we are only enabling, we are not incubating. So we are between the academic institution and industry or incubator, and then trying to connect these two and provide an enabling environment. So we try to bring together institutions, have discussions with them, they may need funding at this stage. So we facilitate them to get projects to carry on this activity further and so on. Next slide, please. So these are our main activities. So we are trying to mine technology. So we were talking to the main thing is we need to connect with other institutions. And when we talk, we come to know many things. So when we were talking to many of the startups, we were talking to Atal Incubation Center at Krishnadevaraya University. So when we talk, we get a lot of ideas and what things can be done and taken forward. And we have expertise in different institutions. So we have to bring together these expertise from different institutions and different sectors of this technology readiness level where institutions can come in and then see how we can facilitate this development of technology. So mining the technologies, then assessing them where they are at the technology readiness level and see how we can support them to take these forward. And now, for example, NITE University as an example, but we work with all academic institutions and incubators. So we have a hospital, we have dental faculty, medical faculty, engineering faculty. So we try to bring together these faculty and try to see, for example, developing medical devices or testing drugs or pharmacologically important compounds and trying to develop diagnostics. So this kind of activity we try to promote in different institutions. So we work with other institutions also, St. Joseph Engineering College we see here. So we are working with them also, Canberra Engineering College, and number of other institutions where we are trying to facilitate this type of activity. Next slide, please. So these are some of the activities that we conduct by networking and developing projects and facilitating technology transfer and facilitating pilot testing of these products developed by startups. Next slide, please. So these are some examples of academic institutions and industry partners with whom we have been working. And we, of course, there is no limit. We are open to working with the institutions everywhere. Wherever there is need, we can try to fill in the gap. Next slide, please. So presently, of course, we are working with, for example, problems of the Coffee Planters Association. We are working with KCCCI, trying to understand what are the problems of the industry. We are working with CFTRI Mysore and other medical colleges and trying to bring together experts from these different institutions. And we are expanding this to other areas of Karnataka because Technology Enabling Center is supposed to be for the whole state of Karnataka. And there are Technology Enabling Center in other states also. So we try to connect with them and try to see how we can act together and try to see how we can bring in expertise from one area to another. Next slide. So I'll give some examples of this type of interactions. Next slide, please. Now, for example, this is an example of a startup, because they needed, this startup developed a device that can help babies. Now, when babies are born, sometimes the infants go into asphyxia. So how to prevent this asphyxia and try how diagnosis can be done early. Now, in a hospital, in a say city, there are big hospitals. These hospitals have blood gas analyzers. So quickly they will analyze the blood and see whether the infant can, is there any chance of the infant becoming susceptible to asphyxia. But what about in a rural area? They don't have devices. So this startup, Mr. Avinash, he has developed a device which can analyze the blood and give the parameters that are required, and it is a one-time use device, so it can be used in a rural area. Now he has developed, as a biochemist, he has developed this device. Now this has to be tested. So how to facilitate this testing? So then we connected him to the doctors in our medical college. So we have pediatricians here. So we had the project was submitted to the Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council, and he is now incubating in an incubator. So now we are going to do validation of this device. So we are facilitating this through our medical college. So this is how we can help a startup. Well, he has a product, but that product has to be validated, and that requires an institution where he doesn't have connect. So this is where we come in and try to facilitate this. Next slide, please. So these are some of the other startups. We also connect with the Society for Innovation and Entrepreneurship of IIT Mumbai. So IIT Mumbai is a great institution, engineering institution, and they have so many engineers working there developing devices, medical devices. But then these devices have to be validated. So this is where we come in. So we partner with them and we help their startups to validate the prototypes that they have developed and see how that can be made more user-friendly, more possible to use in hospitals or in mainly rural areas. So these are some of the startups with which we have been working. Next slide, please. And we also facilitate academic institutions. So we bring together institutions and help them support, submit projects to BIRAC, that is the agency, but we can help to fund other funding agencies also, we can help. So these are some of the examples. Next slide, please. And this is one more engineer who has developed a device or a system for storing fish in a hygienic manner and without wasting the material and reducing the waste. So this is now, of course, he has also become a startup. He's going to further develop this, and we are trying to see how this prototype can be supported. Next slide. This is another startup that came up from collaboration between a medical college and a dental college and an engineering institution. So this a dentist, they came up with the problem of periodontal disease. Now all of us face problems of pain in the oral cavity because of infections. So when these infections occur, how to detect them? Is it an infection or is it due to something else? So normally we know that if we have an injury, there will be warmth. So there is an increase in temperature. So this dentist wanted to develop a device which can measure temperature within the oral cavity regions where they suspect infections to have taken place. So they collaborated with our engineers, a team of engineers from our NMIT, and developed a periodontal probe. So this probe can not only detect temperature, but it can also measure the depth of the cavity. So it can tell many things which the dentist would require for treatment. So now they have registered a startup, and with our incubator, they are doing this further. They have made some prototypes which have been distributed to different dental colleges, and to get opinion from them how to improve this and make it more user friendly to dentists, connect to dental chair and so on. Next slide, please. So these are some of the examples of other institutions with which we are working. Next slide, please. And also we try to bring in industry. So now here, this was a project that we tried to help an academic institution, a researcher who is working on carbon credit. Now, of course, we have one startup who there from NITE who has developed a device for measuring carbon credits in various areas. Now, this researcher, he is working on ocean acidification. We know climate change leads to the oceans becoming acidic. Now, how to manage this problem and what are the chemical changes that are taking place? So, this researcher wanted to identify, because he is from a physical research laboratory. So, he wanted collaboration with biologists. So, he approached us, and with the help of this industry partner, who is a big producer of ornamental fish. So, he's a big exporter of ornamental fish. So, we set up some studies, microcosm studies, to see how the carbon or acidification is taking place. So we try to facilitate this type of collaboration between academicians and industry and try to see how these ideas can be taken forward. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And we are working with number of industries and trying to facilitate addressing their problems. One of the problems we are addressing is also with Camco. We are working on the possibility that, of course, if you, it's generally believed that Areca is grown in this region and so much of consumption takes place. But normally people consume this Areca with tobacco and number of other things. And people have a belief that, okay, even WHO has said that if you take these products, there is a possibility that you may get oral cancer. So the oral cancer may not be due to Areca, but due to other components that you are taking along with that. So Camco wanted us to investigate whether Areca alone is carcinogenic. So we are working on that using different models, cell culture model, animal model, a zebrafish model, and also our dentists are working on the community setup. So we are trying to facilitate this type of research to address the questions which industries have. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we have a number of MOUs with other institutions. Next slide, please. Yeah, these are some of the examples of this type of collaborations. We also collaborate with even institutions abroad, with Sahlgrenska University in Sweden. So public health students from there came and they were trying to see how Indian system works. So we try to facilitate that type of collaboration also. And of course, NITE is also working with Northeast. Our Chancellor, Sri Vinay Hegde, has a lot of affiliation to help students from Northeast. So NITE is offering students from Northeast seats in many of the institutions here. I think some 40 seats are offered to students from Northeast. Now, so we have developed this connect with institutions and students in Northeast. And now we are trying to see how we can connect with the incubators and academic institutions there and see how our technology enabling center could contribute to this and try to see how technologies developed there could be taken forward. Either it can be transferred to industries here, or if they are at a lower level of technology readiness level, how we can facilitate them being taken forward. Next slide. So these are some of the MOUs with other institutions. Next slide, please. And some of the technologies developed and in pipeline through our technology enabling center. Next slide, please. So we have a list of these technologies available and the technology readiness level is also indicated in our website. So this can be seen by anybody. So this is an open website. So people who are interested in these technologies, we can facilitate the transfer of this technology. And whatever action is required to take them forward, we can try to facilitate that. Next slide, please. Yeah, and this is a continuation of that. Next slide, please. And yeah, these are some of the products and some of the food technologies from NITE who have developed this. Next slide, please. And we have number of technologies which have been also transferred and commercialized. Next slide, please. So this is one is the example of beetle leaf tea. I think yesterday Indrani spoke about that. So this one startup came to us. Of course, he was a journalist at that time. He was observing that betel leaf is grown in his village, and he wanted to see what product can be made from that, which is available to common man. So our food technologists developed a tea with this betel, and which is now become a product and is already commercial. And then that is the other group is the Dentronics I mentioned. You have the professor of dental surgery and also engineering professor who have come together to develop that periodontal probe. So that is also now a startup already. That product is under development. Next slide, please. Yeah, this actually, it was a project of a postgraduate student, Dr. Karishma, who is there. So she is the CEO of the startup and she is taking this forward now. Next slide, please. And this is the product release of this betel tea, which happened in Bangalore. So we had a program when the product was made available to journalists and others who came for this program. Next slide, please. And other technologies, we have diagnostics for medical purposes or for aquaculture or for other, because we have molecular biologists and specialists who are working in different areas of biotechnology. So we facilitate this. So this is one technology for detection of salmonella. We know food poisoning is mainly caused by this organism, salmonella, which is there in poultry, eggs. So to detect this very quickly. So we have this technology which has been taken by the industry. Next slide, please. Yeah, and he is working with us in number of areas. Next slide, please. And there are other technologies like bacteriophage technology. Now, antibiotic resistance is a big problem in all hospitals. So doctors are finding it difficult to treat patients because the bug which is causing infection is resistant to all drugs. So how to address this problem? So we have a biological control. So we have a virus which can attack these bacteria. Now this technology, actually we developed such a technology for aquaculture as early as 2005, and the product came to the market also with this company called Mangalore Biotech. So they had this technology, which of course they are still producing this for aquaculture. Now we are working on a more advanced form of this with groups of bacteria, like the whole group of Vibrios, which can cause infections in aquaculture. So this is one technology which has been transferred. Next slide, please. So this is another technology for detection of these Vibrios for diagnostic purpose in aquaculture. Next slide, please. And of course, we facilitate patent applications from, it could be a startup or faculty or students. So we facilitate that. Next slide, please. So on our website, we have examples of these patents which have been filed, published, and so on. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And we also organize programs for other institutions on awareness of this IPR protection. Next slide, please. And also how to facilitate the transfer. And we bring also experts from different areas. So we have we had a scientist from institute called Agarkar Institute in Pune. It's a DST institute. He has developed a number of nanotechnologies, and he wants to see that every PhD thesis leads to a technology development. So we brought him here to explain to him, to our students, this concept and how they can also go in that direction of producing every PhD thesis leading to a technology development and patent, and then finally a commercial technology. Next slide. And we also bring experts from industry. So now this expert, Dr. Narayanan, he is actually a biotechnologist and also a very well-known entrepreneur. And he has developed at least 7 or 8 technologies, and 2 of his technologies have been bought by Tatas. So Tata Soulful, you might have heard. So that is a product that he developed, and he has now sold it to Tatas. So we also brought him because he has number of ideas about how these agri technologies can be developed further. And in fact, we are bringing him again in joint collaboration with KCCI. We are having a program on 28th February. We are bringing different experts in the agri-tech, food tech area, so that entrepreneurs, technology developers can interact with them and try to see how we can avail the expertise that is available with these experts. And of course, another professor, he is a dental professor who has developed a bone replacement material from eggshell. So we brought him also to explain his journey. So he was explaining how he was struggling to get some funding initially, but then once he got funding through BIRAC, then now of course he has got crores of funding and his product is becoming commercial. Next slide, please. And startups created. Next slide, please. And we also facilitate ideation. So we start with ideation and help them to take it forward through hackathons. And we also try to identify best ones and try to see how we can support them. Next slide, please. So we had Dr. Vishal also with us. And there is another professor from Indian Institute of Science, Hardik Pandya. So when we said Hardik Pandya is coming, people were very excited. So they thought cricketer Hardik Pandya is here, but it was scientist Hardik Pandya. But he is also very exciting scientist, and he has done number of this type of technology development promotions. And we had another doctor there. He has just completed his MBBS. And by the time he completed his MBBS, he already has 4 companies. So he has been working with engineers and developed number of technologies which is useful for the medical community. So we wanted to expose our doctors to this type of thinking, where we think, okay, the doctor means it's only to treat. But doctors have a lot of ideas. They know the problem, which engineers do not know. So we need to understand the problem from doctors and try to see how we can address it through scientists or engineers. So that is what we are trying to do. Next slide, please. So these are some of the winning proposals from the hackathon that we had. There was one team from, I think the Smart Wheel team is from St. Joseph Engineering College, and then from other institutions. So we work with bringing together all the institutions. Next slide, please. And these are our startups. Of course, Shiv Kiran is already here. And his technology has now become a startup. This is another faculty from our Physiotherapy Institute. So these are some of the examples of startups that we have enabled. Next slide. So now this is, now we started with some 100 ideas and then tried to see how many can be supported. I think some 15 came, it has been narrowed down, and now out of that, maybe some 10 or so may be supported by NITE, which can become a startup immediately. Next slide, please. So how the screening has been done. Next slide, please. And the boot camp and other support was arranged for these. Next slide, please. Orientation program was held. Next slide, please. So these are some of the startups which have been selected for pre-incubation. Next slide, please. This is with our Atal Incubation Center. Next slide, please. And of course, we connect with the government bodies and international institutions. Next slide, please. We are connected with the Food and Agriculture Organization in Rome, which is a UN organization, connected with food. So we are working